Hey, now you see me. Welcome everyone. Thank you, Johanna. Starting the day with some technical difficulties, so things were going real well. Thank you so much for being here. As I show on the screen, please give your name, where you're from, and we'll get started probably about 5 after. So you need bathroom breaks, that kind of stuff, now's the time. Alexa, welcome. Madison, Madison's from UCSD, welcome. Laura from New York, Rosie, San Jose. Oh, now they're pouring in. Kathy from Fort Collins, Lizzie, Portland. I see Ann Arbor, UCSD, Australia. Oh, but based somewhere else, NSS. Edinburgh, thank you for joining us this evening for you. Grazia. So we are going to be getting started. Vicky from Texas. We'll probably start in the next 2 or 3 minutes as more people trickle in. I see a few familiar faces on the screen, so thanks for being here. Again, please go ahead and just share your name, where you're from in the chat. Let us know that you're here. Now's the time if you need to grab hydration, maybe do a little stretch. If you've been sitting at your computer all day, this is a good time for that.
All over.
Yeah, people coming from all over. You can hear here with me is my roomie, and who's going to help me manage kind of our chat Q&A, my friend Lara Tahab. So we'll introduce her more in a minute. Oh, hey, Andy. Spent some time with you in Buffalo a few weeks ago before the lockdown came into place. And I do also just want to invite folks, if you are willing, able, joining via video is a really nice way to just be present, be part of the community here, seeing some faces, smiling and waving at folks. Definitely would encourage that. So we will give it 1 more minute and then jump into the content. If you haven't already, go ahead and share your name, where you're from. Oh, I see a few other friendly faces. Thanks for joining via video. If you can at all, I would definitely encourage it. Helps us with presence if we're actually feeling accountable to video as well. Got some more people joining in the chat. Ross from San Diego. Yeah, so okay, we are going to go ahead and jump in. Voss, San Jose. Hey, Voss, and Kim in Sunnyvale. So feel free to keep as you join. Feel free to add your info to the chat. It's nice to just get some names and faces again as you join. So you're here for a workshop on managing in this new sprung upon us age of distributed work. So as we jump in, I just want to tell a little introduction to who I am and why I'm doing this workshop. So my name's Stephanie. I'm based here in San Francisco. I run a consultancy called Not by Accident, where we really focus on helping people live, lead, and work on purpose. And this is actually something that comes from a really personal thing for me. Not by Accident is about not living your life by accident. But what it comes from is I actually was in a near-death car accident when I was 19, so a few years ago. And it was really this choice of not letting myself be defined by this accident, but also not letting my life happen by accident, to really be purposeful. And so I tell you about this because a lot of what I'm going to talk about today comes from this belief that I hold that is, it's not just about managing, it's not just about responding to this crisis, it's about who we are and how we show up as individuals and leaders in this world. Because I want more for everyone that I work with than just to manage well, to survive. I want you to really be successful, thrive, and feel empowered as you go forward. And I gave her a call out a minute ago, but just again, my roommate, dear friend, also UCSD alum, Lara Chahab is here, being my kind of assistant, helping manage chat and questions. So if you have stuff, yeah, she's gonna come say, hey, there she is. So Lara's here helping out. She's on chat, helping me monitor everything. So feel free to send stuff to chat. We've got a whole system worked out to help me manage that as we go. So if you have questions, if things come up, you're confused about stuff, shoot it into the chat and I will respond to that via her. She'll help me manage that. I also just want to give a call out. She runs the Better Lab. It's an amazing research institution out of UCSF. So check them out as well. Let's jump in, get started. So we're all coming from our homes and this is a different environment than we've been used to. So I just want to have us land a little bit before we jump into the content. Maybe you were in a previous meeting. Maybe you have things that have been canceled or family members in the other room. I have a dog that is being sequestered in the back to try to keep him from barking. So just take a minute, maybe even close your eyes for a second and just check in. Maybe take a deep breath. Notice your body against the chair. Notice what's going on energetically. Are you feeling anxious, curious? Are you kind of bored of sitting through so many webinars already? Just notice what's coming up for you as you land here and agree for the next about 90 minutes that we're going to try to set that aside and just be present to this content, to these ideas, and to the people in this community. So hopefully you're feeling a little less frenzied, open to new ideas. And again, best we can. This is all in the name of better remote work practices. Like, let's do the best we can to be present for the next hour. If you can, shut down the email, the chat, give yourself a chance to just focus on one thing as opposed to being distracted. I would really welcome that. I also understand life happens, but if you can, be as present as you can. So let's jump in. And the first thing, and I'm going to ask you a few questions throughout. Anytime you see a slide like this is your chance to add your thoughts into the chat. Because we are facing right now a global pandemic. It's a crisis like many of us haven't seen before. And so I wonder to you, what do you feel like the manager's role is during a time like this? And I'm going to pull up the chat. I just love to hear, like, what is the responsibility of a manager right now? Keeping morale up, April. Yeah, I think that's a really important one. Motivating teams. Yep. Reassuring, positive focus. Leading by example, patience. I love that. Encouragement and engagement. Leaders being visible. Oh, making sure vendors are up to date. Yeah, who are our partners? Making sure our teams are okay. Communication and consistency. Those are great. Planning for when we'll get back in the office, whenever that may be. That they feel cared for, feel connected. Yeah, being available, because who knows what's coming up for people. Yeah, so I love this. I think these are really good and insightful responses because right now we are, just by our title, generally, we are looked to set the guidance, to set the tone. But especially now, it's time to show people that we care, right? That we are human, that we are struggling, worried, going through things ourselves. So it's both the balance of humility as well as really showing that care. So the high framework for today, and this was in the doc that was shared out as well. I really see the idea when we think about remote or distributed management, there are 4 key things that we need to think about. and 4 things that we want to make sure we have structured and really considered. So the first, I think a lot of us touch on this, is care personally. We're also going to talk about environment. We are in a completely new, not only physical environment, right? Working from home is new to many of us, but the social dynamics of our world have shifted a lot. We also want to think about the work, like what actually matters right now, what work needs to get done, and also how do we set ourselves up to do that successfully, which really encompasses the big part, which is systems. And I think of systems as everything from like, how are we going to communicate to how do we keep track of projects? So in this session, we're going to go through these 4 different segments. And I'm going to give you some tips, tricks, but also questions to use that are coaching questions so that you can really thoughtfully have conversations with your team, so that it's not just you as the leader telling them what to do, but it's about collaboratively creating practices so that everyone feels supported and able to manage well. So we'll go through each of these 4 segments. Again, I'll pause for questions. We'll have some chances to chat via Zoom, but this is the basic framework and really the kind of model that you should be thinking about as you think about managing your team, always, but especially now when you're not all in the same place. So the first part, this is something that I actually pull from Radical Candor, which is a program all about giving feedback created by Kim Scott. And there's this thing that we're told from pretty early in our careers. I don't know how many of you heard this, but there's this idea that you need to be professional at work, right? And professional has this notion of, I think of those stock photos where people are in the business suits and like awkwardly reaching across the table to shake another business dude's hand. And professional is this kind of like devoid of humanity. And so what we say at Radical Candor is that you've got to be more than just professional. You've got to actually give a damn or care about the people that you work with on a human level. And the thing that's really interesting about that now is we're getting more insight into people's humanity than we ever have before, right? You're being welcomed into people's homes, whether they like it or not, when you're on video. So the personal and the professional are really becoming more merged right now. So caring about people from the baseline. And just a few things, right? We all feel this. We got to recognize there is this global feeling of tension and anxiety right now. And even if people are faring well and feeling safe and have all their needs met, there is this rush to do things like buy all the toilet paper because it feels like it's one thing we can control. So just knowing as we go to manage and as we have expectations of our teams that there is this underlying tension is part of showing that you care. Also things like recognizing some people might have affected family members. People are worried about their parents, their grandparents. I know that I feel that way for mine. So having empathy there. People that have plans canceled. I mean, it could be as small as the dinner party you look forward to and as big as someone's wedding. But there's a lot of just sadness that these things that people have often looked forward to aren't happening. I mean, vacations that people have planned, and that's like their light at the end of the tunnel, may not be going forward. And it's important to empathize with that, right? There are people that are nervous about working from home. This is new territory for so many of us. And also this space of private homes now public. I was with a girlfriend of mine the other day, and she said, you know, it's funny, I'm on these video conferences and my coworkers are seeing my house and my husband walking through. And she was like, it feels uncomfortable that my private life is being exposed now. And so while for many of us, that feels like an opportunity, right? It's like, hey, let's get to know each other better. Some people, they like those boundaries. So how do we start to recognize and honor that? And also people have friends and roommates and kids, right? My roommate and I can often work from the same space, but if we have 2 calls going on at the same time, we need our separate spaces. And especially in cities like San Francisco, there are people that have 15 people to a house. They don't have private spaces that they can work. So again, just building up our empathy to think about all of the different situations our teams and our direct reports may be going through. So this is all just to say, like, there's a lot happening right now. And I don't know about you, but it's a lot to manage personally, but also to be caring for our other teams. Like, this is just the context of things that we want to keep in mind. And so if you have thoughts of other things that could be coming up for people, add that to the chat now. But what my recommendation is conversation. And hopefully you're having one-on-ones with your teams, individual one-on-ones, to just check in how they're doing. So what I've done is I've created a list of questions that I think can help you ask people to show this caring personally. Now, this is a long list of questions, so I'm going to kind of speak to them but not read them out loud. But checking in on how people are feeling, if they're being safe and taking precautions, seeing just how they worked at home. How are they feeling about it? Doing some opportunities for them to reflect about themselves, right? What do you know about yourself? And how is this work from home going to impact you? Checking in and asking about those roommates, pets, kids, what their concerns are. So I'll share all of these out after the session, these questions, but the idea here is we should be having a very intentional early one-on-one with our teams to say, like, how are you? What's going on for you? And doing this is a way to just really help establish that care, build that empathy, and let them know it's a safe place to bring a little bit more of that personal into work, because the reality is it's always here, but especially when you're at home, especially when there's this global pandemic, it's really present. So ask your team, think about setting up a time now to schedule that one-on-one to just do a health check. How are you? Now, this is something that I pulled from and one other thing on this, sorry, bottom tip, share your situation too. Let them know kind of what you're going through, because that creates a safe space. So if you notice a teammate's nervous to share or doesn't want to say too much, sharing your own situation can really help. So this is actually a tool created by Org Hacking. I'll send the link out to it. It's a Google Doc they created. But this is something you can send out to your teams to just give them a framework to start thinking about, okay, how do I set myself up for success remote working from home? And it's got all these different sections, but this one is about, like, how are you doing connection, the far left, right? This one is about how are you taking care of yourself? The next one is about physical space, transitions, like taking care of your space. The next one's schedule, how are you gonna work? And the last one is team. And I love this because it's just something that makes you go, oh yeah, how am I thinking about all these different facets of working from home? And you just sharing this to your team and not even saying you need to send this back to me, but just saying, hey, this might be helpful for you to think about setting yourself up for success. I just love this tool that they created. So again, I'll share the link out. You can look it up through Google, Org Hacking, and Remote Work Canvas. But again, the key here is like, you don't need them to report back to you on this, but you can use it as a tool for discussion to just see that they're thinking about the things that they need so they're taking care of themselves. Now, eventually, we'll have been working from home for a little while. And you don't need to ask those early questions, right? How are you feeling? What precautions? You don't need to ask those questions every single week. That gets a little tiring. But it can be really helpful to check in, right? Don't just ask once and then stop caring about how they're doing. So use this care personally as a way to keep checking in on them and help them do their own growth as they are in this remote environment, right? Ask them what they're learning about themselves. What are they finding that they like and that they don't like? How's their balance between work and life? Are you engaged? Are you tired? Are you motivated? These are all questions we should ask normally. But again, especially now, it's important that we're reflecting and checking in on this, are people feeling connected? So care personally, the big picture here is we need to check in with our teams on how they are doing as a human amidst this very difficult time. And asking thoughtful coaching questions. You'll notice most of these questions start with what or how. That's what makes them open-ended, so that they're not just a yes or no response. Asking open-ended coaching questions and just being really curious and actively listening to hear how they're doing is an important foundation just to help people feel more safe as they work with you. So I'm gonna pause here and just see if there are any questions, thoughts coming up, anything I missed. Would love to hear your thoughts at this point in the chat. Yeah, open-ended but specific questions. Yeah, one thing I teach, you know that question, how, or do you have any feedback for me, right? That's a yes or no question. Do you? Nah, I don't have any feedback. But also people, when they're asked that, it's like, feedback about what? It kind of creates this panic. It actually triggers our amygdala hijack, which is the fight or flight part of our brain. And what we want to do is get people into their rational thinking brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. So asking open-ended questions, but that are specific, is a really good way to help people not feel under threat, but also to give them specific guidance on like, what are you specifically looking for now? Yeah. So thanks for that, Lizzie. Anything else coming up? Care personally? Makes sense. It's funny, I had a manager, I won't say him by name, I think he's here, but I shared it with him, the framework, and he's like, oh, I didn't even think about just checking in on people like this. So yeah, I think it's a great chance. Yeah, Julia, oh, also 5-minute good mornings and how are things going? Just check-ins. I love that. I actually will talk about that in terms of structures a little bit later. So what are the spaces we can create to have more of this personal relationships? Great. So I'm going to keep going to the next one, which is environment. So environment's really interesting. I actually see a question that I do want to call out really quick from Heidi. How do you balance these with people's personal privacy? You know, one of the things that I believe is that to care personally, like we are more than just professional robots. But I think part of that is design, right? So designing a relationship with your coworkers to say, hey, I realize that I maybe have not asked about the personal so much in the past, but I know now, like knowing how you're doing is more important than ever. So I want to ask some questions to just check in on how you're doing. And if you ever feel uncomfortable, you let me know. So you can design how comfortable, how much they're willing to share. But also I think just showing like, I'm here to help you as a human, not so much like drive you as a drone that needs to do work. I think that really helps in terms of like helping people feel comfortable versus their privacy needs. I think the other thing is working at home automatically exposes more of our lives to people. And so talking to people about that, to say, hey, I know that you don't normally share too much about your personal life, and now people are on video in your home. How are you with that? How is that showing up for you? I think asking that kind of question gives them a chance to voice it so you can design together what they're gonna need. And then one other question, how frequently should we check in with team members? I think generally one-on-ones should happen with your direct reports at least once a week. I think especially right now, a once-a-week one-on-one is really good. I'll talk more about that in the structure section though. So I'm gonna move on. If you have more questions, feel free to add them to the chat. Laura is gonna help out in adding it to the doc. So let's talk about environment. Like I said, we're in our houses now. You're gonna see people's artwork. You're gonna hear their dogs barking. So just check in with people. What is your environment like? What are you gonna need to make you really successful there? So one of the other things there is check your assumptions. I'm really fortunate to have a house that has a bedroom as well as a living room. I can go between different spaces. So maybe my assumption is, oh, everyone will have like a work setup. But I remember I have other friends and colleagues who literally have a bedroom. And then they have common spaces, but if they need to take a call, they've got to do it in their bedroom. So just check in with your assumptions about the kind of environments people are working in, and also what kind of access they have to equipment, resources. For me, I have the resources to be able to buy my own mouse and a keyboard, but some people don't. So recognize kind of your privilege, the assumptions you're making about people's setups, especially with regard to their environment, and be open to them, again, designing what they might need to help make them successful in this new environment. The other thing, yeah, limited setups. Who knows what equipment people have? They might be used to a big old monitor and now they don't have one. And what does that mean for how they do work? We also want to think about things like Wi-Fi. I know in the back of our house, the Wi-Fi never works. And it's only if you sit up front that Wi-Fi is really good. So do people have the support they need? If your company can do any sort of thing in terms of offering additional stipends for equipment, if you can do anything to subsidize Wi-Fi so they can get faster Wi-Fi, if people struggle with those things, like think about, can my company offer that? That could be really helpful. Another one is daily schedules. People aren't commuting anymore, they are at home. And so doesn't necessarily make sense to start your day at 8. Could you start later or earlier? What's happening with schedules and how is that impacting the way that they show up? Distractions, again, kids, dogs, chores, errands, tidying up the house. There's a lot more you feel like you can do from home. And so part of it as leaders is just saying, hey, I know that all of these things are possible now. And I don't need to say, one thing that I really have problems with is I see some stuff online that's like, treat your workday like your workday, like get dressed like you always do, like don't do any chores during the day. And as someone who works from home pretty regularly, the beauty of working from home is you can take care of your life. And so there's a balance that I think you can talk to your team about to say, you know, distractions are real. If you need to go empty the dishwasher, do it. But also think about like, what is the impact on your work and make trade-offs. So help people understand like, it's okay that distractions are going to exist in this environment. How can you effectively manage them? Another thing is being okay with no more, don't know what the sentence there was supposed to be, but being okay with no more snacks in the office, with no more casual bump-ins. There's a lot that we need to start being okay with in the face of these new environments. And the other thing, and I spoke to this a little bit as this idea of like, let's just keep doing business as usual. Personally, I think that that is a bit of an overstep because this isn't business as usual. I actually think this is an incredible opportunity for us to start to question what the normal has been and start to change behaviors and habits. So instead of just saying like, let's try to be normal or just do your normal routine, what if we instead said, what can you create? What is possible here for you that will help you have a great life and feel secure in these uncertain times? So I think there's a balance between like productivity, work like normal, keep your routine, and what can we create in this new world to help you be even happier, even more effective than before? So see this as a bit of an opportunity because our environment has shifted so much. Oh, and there's a quick tip there. Again, share as well as listen. Talk to people about your shortcomings, the ways that you're struggling, and what's possible. So just a shout out, again, let's go to chat. What are the concerns you have about your environment? Like, let's just have a chance to get real with each other here. What are you worried about? What's working? Oh yeah, if weather will affect you, that you'll just stay sitting in your house the whole time. Always, I'm not doing enough. Yeah, that like overachiever must work harder, must push more. And just to that point, thank you so much for saying that, Alexa. Give ourselves a little bit of a break. There is a significant mental toll when there's this much happening in the world, when there's this much fear. So in this sense, like do your best to just say, hey, things are hard right now. And also for your team, things are hard. Let's give ourselves a little bit of a break and know that we will find new ways to work. Let's be creative. Yeah, that jobs might become not as necessary because there's not an office. So it is tough when we have this situation that roles are changing. And so what is it that we can do to get creative? What are the needs my company has and how might I satisfy those when my normal role isn't here. Yeah, Wi-Fi is sucking in different parts of the house. Us too, our bedroom, the Wi-Fi is not great. We got these like Wi-Fi extenders. I think we need to get tech support to really help with that. But looking into some like Wi-Fi support that gives Wi-Fi service to the back. Oh, not commuting will affect my health. Okay, so hopefully you're a walking commuter or something. Yeah, one thing that I realized, I used to walk between meetings all the time. So I had probably a good half hour of walking just between meetings. And now it's like, I just sit on the computer and hang out until my next meeting. So what can I do to move around? I actually will love like standing up during meetings. That's something, we'll do this a little bit later, have like a little bit of a break. Yeah. Oh, worries about, yeah, there's a lot of people in this space. Maybe I'm going to build a tough relationship. So I think relationship design with your colleagues, or with the people, or with your colleagues, with your roommates, housemates, is a really good opportunity, right? To say, hey, how is this working for you? What can we create together? Maybe you create a shared calendar so you can rotate spaces. We only have 2 of us, so it's not that big of a challenge, but maybe if you're living in a big house, maybe you have like a sign-up sheet for communal spaces if you want to be able to move around. I don't know. Oh, suggestions of great routers. Love that. So, oh, and some benefits being home. Thanks, Adriana. A fictional roommate to blame things on when things go awry. Yeah, chores suck. Great. So there are real concerns, and I think a lot of you are seeing that there's opportunities here, right? Like, how can we create something new that will actually help us even more, instead of just expecting this to be business as usual? So as you're checking in with your team, and again, for yourself, this is a great opportunity to do some self-reflection. Questions that you can ask. Again, these are powerful questions. They're open-ended. And well, I guess, do you? Could be yes or no. But tell me more about it is a good way to transition. So as we think about environment, what are our workspaces? Do you have the tools and resources? And what are your hours, right? Are you gonna work the whole time that you would normally be out of the house? Or do you wanna give yourself permission that, okay, I don't have my normal hour commute. During that hour, I'm gonna do this instead, so that we're not just going right to our desks to start the day and working these crazy long work days. I actually will even set timers. I had to do this the other day. I realized I was working at like 8:30 at night. And so I set a calendar event on my calendar so I get a pop-up that says, end of the day, celebrate. So I remind myself to stop working and transition. And then there's this question of like, how do I separate my home life and my work life? The reality is it's blending now. But what are some agreements you can put in place with yourself to help you make those transitions? I've heard a lot of people will do like rituals, right? They maybe have like an end of the day ritual where they write down all their accomplishments, or a start of the day ritual where they sit down on the chair by their bed in their bedroom and they write down what their goals are. Get clear about distractions, right? For me, my dog is a definite distraction, but he's also a really good reminder to take a break. So again, that yes and, both and, it's a distraction, and maybe that distraction can help me remember to get off my chair, to go move around a little bit. There's this thing that we do in coaching, I forget what the term actually is, but you use something as a cue to have a transition. So, oh, I noticed I'm wanting to go eat. Oh, I'm hungry, that's a sign I should also go for a walk. Or, I'm really feeling the pull to do laundry right now. Maybe I need to take a break, and actually give yourself that permission. But again, as a manager, ask, what can we design together to ensure you're set up for success? What do you want to build with me to help us be successful together? So I'm seeing some really great positive examples. Thank you, Laura. There's bunnies that are bouncing around at someone's house. People are really friendly on dog walks. I've definitely noticed that too. People are chatting a lot more, even from like the 8-foot distance. Dogs doing chores. Oh, kids are doing chores. Sorry. That would be interesting. Kids doing chores. That's awesome. And I know also some people have kids that they have to manage, right? A lot of schools are closed. I have a few friends that have said, you know, my kids are in early elementary school. It's not the end of the world that they're not getting like a rigorous normal education right now. Like, we're going to take more of the Waldorf approach and just kind of let them be creative and have gym and play. So how can you be a little bit more open to what's possible in this space and just not be so hard on ourselves in this difficult time, right? So love all of these opportunities that we're seeing from this new environment. I think communities are really coming together in different ways to support each other because we're here now. For the first time, we're not all leaving the neighborhood and we're present. So there's cool opportunities with the environment as well. So again, questions to think for yourself, but also to ask your team to just check in. How are they feeling about their environment? Great. And then again, the kickoff is only one time, and then you have the check-ins, right? So, and again, you can use one of these questions a week, or you can maybe start your day with this, right? If you do a daily check-in every morning, maybe you ask a question. Hey, what are you noticing your biggest distractions are? Maybe mine is that I like can't stop going to the ice cream or to the freezer for that another bite of ice cream. But these are questions you can use to just, again, check in with people. How is your environment? How are your breaks? Are you taking them? How is this separation of work and life? Do you have the tools you need? Do you need something better? After a little while of working from home, I got this computer stand, so my computer is raised, and that has been a huge game changer. So these check-ins, again, do the foundation setting in that first one-on-one, but then afterward, just keep checking in. How's it going? Because especially as we are at this longer, people are going to notice different things, come up with new challenges. So that's environment. We're going to move on to the next section, which is the work. And this one, because ultimately, like, there's a lot going on in the world. We're all at home now, and we still got work to do. So again, how can we use this as an opportunity to say, what really matters here? What about the work I'm doing really has an impact and I should keep doing? What should I be doing that I haven't had time for? And maybe what am I doing that I could stop because it doesn't really have the impact that I want it to have? So again, starting to think like, what is most important? Especially in the case where employees maybe feel like they are not able to get as much done because of the stress, because of being home. Getting really clear about what work is most important. What are our goals? This can also take place of how do we start to break things down? When you're not in the office together all the time and having those constant kind of bump-ins, breaking work up into more manageable chunks can be a really good way. And if you do any sort of agile or sprint planning, I'll speak to a little bit of that, but how do I break down work, especially on like bigger creative projects, so that we can make manageable progress instead of feeling like we're churning towards this giant goal? Another thing, again, this is your chance to try out new ways of managing. Maybe you try delegating a little bit more than normal, or you try a little bit more systemic management practices. But I would say, like, how can you see this as an opportunity to try something new out in the way that you work and you help manage your team's work? And the next one is time management, right? How are we getting things done in the amounts of time without also overextending ourselves into the rest of our life? So here, though, the one thing I'd say is you as the manager, this is a place where it's really powerful if you come in with a goal and with a vision. So maybe it's saying to your team, hey, this is what we've been working on. And like, that is still the vision. And these are the ways I'm going to help us break it down moving forward, right? But this is really an opportunity for you to step into that leadership to say, hey, here's why we're all here. Here is our North Star, and help with driving that alignment. Again, something we should always be doing, but doing more of now is really helpful. So this is also a really good time to check in around micromanagement. Because when we don't see people, there's this idea of like butts in seats, or if you see people sitting at their desk working, you feel more secure that they're getting things done. So just in the chat, I'd love to hear, what is your tendency around micromanagement? Okay, Ken, trying not to micromanage. Great. And right now, there's probably even more anxiety around needing to check in on people regularly. Yeah. Any other thoughts, tendencies around micromanagement? I'm going to pour some water to give you a second to think about it. I know when I first started managing, I always had a lot of concern about if the team was getting things done. So I would check in on them throughout the day. And eventually I realized that they did better work when I wasn't doing that. So yeah, just let people do their thing, April. Understand that people are under stress. Yeah, trusting people to get their job done makes a big difference. Give people time to adjust, flexibility to make working from home work. Oh, good question. What's the balance between over and under communicating? I'm going to give you some tools to think about that. Yeah, the line between checking in and micromanagement and responsibilities as a manager, just doing mental health catch-ups, being more lenient. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot around like, what's the line between checking in and micromanagement? So there's some discomfort here, right? Constant Slack chats, maybe more structure. Yeah, dynamics with kids at home is totally different. Absolutely, love this. So there's a lot. I love the kind of richness of the chat on this right now, because it's like, oh man, like I've got to make sure the work gets done. And yet, yeah, I don't want to be a micromanager. So how do I balance that? And this context of all this crazy stuff going on in the world. There's a lot to think about. So I'm going to give you a few models to just help you think about this a little bit more, things you can try. And the thing again that I would say is, this is our chance to get vulnerable with our teams, to say, hey, I don't know how to manage. I haven't managed remotely before. And so part of me wants to apply the things I've done in the past, and part of me wants to check in with you every 5 minutes. Tell me what would work for you. What do you need, right? What if you made it more of a conversation instead of you saying, I have all the answers because I am deemed with this manager title and I will tell you how it's gonna be. So I'd encourage you, have a conversation. But again, it is really up to you because you are the one responsible for the work. So it's up to you to determine the right systems. So one thing that I love, this is from situational leadership, and this is supposed to be read from right to left. But the idea here, if you look at the bottom, so people typically start out, well, let me just describe what this is. So development levels are the different levels of competence and commitment our teams have to getting everything from a task to an entire project done. And people are at different development levels based on their past experience, how much they know about things, how engaged they are at work. So again, from right to left, typically when you give something new to a new person, they have low competence, they don't know how to do it, but they are committed, they're really eager, right? I think of like the recent college grad, they're like, yeah, I wanna try this, or giving someone a new responsibility for this first time. They have no idea what they're doing, but they are ready to go. So this person, when you think about delegating to them, this is probably a person you wanna have a little bit more frequent check-ins with, right? You wanna design like, hey, these are the steps that you should take, and this is how I want you to be thinking about completion. Also, if you get confused, come and ask me questions. I'm here to support you. So if someone's in this beginner space, really increasing the support, maybe feels like a little bit more micromanagement can be really good. And you can ask, hey, have you done this before? How confident are you in your ability to do this? Just check in with them to kind of gauge. Because the thing is if an enthusiastic beginner gets into it and then they realize they have no idea what they're doing, they become a disillusioned learner. They kind of starting to have an idea what to do, but they are so overwhelmed, confused, lost, that they just kind of give up. And this is really dangerous when we get disengagement, people wanting to leave, people saying like, I don't get the support I need from my manager, right? And so what we need to do here is really re-engage them, help them with the things that they're not knowing how to do. Again, more frequent check-ins. Now, these show like they go in order, but it's not always the case. But eventually, if you are giving people the resources that they need, helping them, they will have that moderate to high competence, right? They finally have learned the skills. But they also might not be that excited about the thing. Maybe they were disillusioned too long. So even though they know what to do, they're kind of disappointed. So they're capable, but they're cautious. And then the last level, this is when someone's got it mastered and they're super committed, right? So this is your person who like I can just lob a task over the fence to them and they will come back to me with it completed and good. And the thing is every person on every different task, like this is not each of your team members, don't assign these to people, but this is really task or project based. So again, especially now, thinking about where does this person land? Like, have they done it before? What's their competence level? How excited are they about doing this? Maybe you're giving someone that has high competence, but they don't really want to do the work. So just think about this, because this will give you a guide and a bit of a framework to think about how much should I be checking in? How much guidance should I give? And how much can I ease off? The challenge of this is totally variable. Sometimes you need more, sometimes you need less. Same person may need a different kind of management based on the work you give. But I love this because it just helps you think more about how can I manage this person based on their competence and their commitment. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of like how much to step in and step out. And again, this is situational leadership. It is a great model. There's trainings online that you can do if you want to dive deeper. But what we also want to think about is what actually matters in the work that our team is doing. Are there things that we should deprioritize right now in light of the current economy, situation, emotional status? Like, what are the most important things that our team needs to work on? And I think you as the manager, getting really clear about what those things are is important. So I would say take some time to think to yourself of like, what matters? What is it that my team has to get done? What's the most important? And how do I show my team like the levels of priority? And you can set that up through OKRs. There's a lot of different frameworks, but objectives and key results. You can use, again, there's tons of models here for like, what are our big goals right now? OKRs are a great example of one. You can also just write things down as like most important things. I love this. Just say like, okay, our 3 most important things to get done this week are A, B, and C. And then everyone knows like that is where they should focus their energy, even if they've got other interruptions or distractions coming in. So I do this for myself every week, and then every day I'm like, okay, what's the most important thing I could get done today? And I write that down. This is a great thing if you do like a daily morning stand-up to check in, to just say, okay, everyone come and share your most important things for the day. It could be 1, it could be 3, but just give that framing so people have those kind of North Stars. Another one to think about is t-shirt sizing. It disappeared. T-shirt sizing is this kind of funny thing, but this is about scope. So if you think about different sizes of t-shirts, there's like extra small, small, medium, large. And when you're talking to your team about the different work that they're doing, this is, again, a really simple way of talking about scope, unless you're in like agile sprints and point planning. But just to say, okay, do you think this is like an extra small kind of project, or is this like an extra large kind of project? And it starts to give you an idea of how much time the employee or your team thinks it would take, so that you can give them the right amount of time. So is it like, this is like a 1-week large t-shirt, or whatever. So if you use this t-shirt sizes, this is something you can just map out and play with your team to say, okay, an extra small thing will take half a day. A small thing will take 1 day. And then as you're assigning projects and work, say, okay, what t-shirt size would this be? So that you get an idea of how much time it'll take them to get it done. Again, thinking about scope, thinking about how much time people need, helping them also think about how much work will go into a different project. And that's a way, again, to start thinking about scope management in the absence of more developed agile tools. Another thing that I love is this idea of the Pomodoro method. this Italian researcher, he was working on his PhD and was finding he had a really hard time getting things done. And so a pomodoro is a tomato. And you know those like timers that you twist that look like tomatoes that will like ding at the end? Anyway, the pomodoro method, he literally wrote a paper about this, is a method of setting a timer for say 25 minutes. And so you work and you sit down and you just work intently for 25 minutes. And then when the timer goes off, you take a break. So Pomodoro method is a way to help you get focused work done, but also build in those break periods. So kind of fun. I mean, you can set a timer on your iPhone. I think a tomato timer is more cool, but something to try out. And then the next one is Kanban. So Kanban is agile methodology. If you don't have any sort of project management already set up, this is a really nice way, and this is a super simple one. This can be done in a Google Doc, but there are also tons of tools for free I can tell you about. But this is a way to think about projects and even task backlogs as well as what's being worked on. So imagine for your team, you want to just see like the big picture of all the work that's being done. You could create in a spreadsheet, for example, 4 columns. This is what we have to do, this is what's in progress, this is what's done, and this is the backlog. And then you can have individuals with their names so you can see the progress for each of their things. So this is a way that you can actually start to really visually see what do we have to do, what's in progress, what's done. Backlog is like what's stuff that we're not quite going to get to yet. Again, tons of research about this online. Atlassian has a bunch of great articles. They developed Jira, which is a developer platform for managing projects. So Kanban is another really fun way and just simple visual way to help people think about what is the work that I have to do, what's being worked on, and what's done. And this is a way, again, with your team, you can think about, instead of micromanaging, asking them to self-manage, and then you can just check in on specific things if they seem like they're stuck. Now, one thing I'll say, I had a boss who, she lovely, and we had just started working together, but she wanted me to fill out this Google Doc every single day. Now, I think of myself as like the S4, right? The person that is independent, like gets my stuff done. You can just toss it to me and I'm good. And she was really nervous, so she was wanting to fill out this task sheet every single day. And I was so annoyed and I just refused to do it because I felt like she was micromanaging me. Now, the beauty is we talked about it eventually. And I was like, yeah, that feels like micromanagement. Like, can we just set a deadline and then I'll check in with you on our one-on-ones about if I'm stuck in progress rather than this daily tracker. So again, these are all different tools. Check in with your team about the right level of detail and try out 1 or 2 of these. Don't do all of them at once. That's overwhelming. But again, I'll share tools to help you manage these things, but it's a good place to start. So if you have questions or thoughts about this, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll probably go back to it a little bit later. But hopefully this gives you an idea of some tools. The last thing I'll say, plan your breaks. I, working from home, will plan in like a half hour for yoga halfway through the day. I'll block off my lunch. And I'll have reminders pop up, or I'll use the Pomodoro timer to make sure that I get the heck up. So I'm not just sitting there all day. So don't be afraid to do that for yourself as well. Cool. So like I did in all the other ones, it's great to do coaching conversation with your team about work, right? But it starts off with this one, like you need to come into leadership here. So to kick off, it's really important that you say, hey, this is the method that I want to try. We're going to use OKRs and we're going to use a Kanban board in Google Docs to measure our progress so we can check in. So it's really important that you as a leader take some time to think about that and design it up front. But once you've done that, you want to ask, right? So what are your goals for the next month? What about the next week? Maybe your team does 3-month check-ins and 2-week sprints or 3-month goal planning. So I think in this case, really think about like, what are the time frames for how we want to kind of chunk our work together? Ask your team, what are they excited to work on, but what are they also concerned about? I think the other thing is thinking about the work, like who are they reliant on? Who are the people that they will have handoffs between, that they need resources or assets from? Help them get really clear about like who they rely on so that they can make sure those relationships are great. And then the last thing is like, how do they want to be held accountable? If you see on your Kanban board that they're not getting things done, what do they want you to do to help hold them more accountable? So ask, design with your team. And then again, the check-ins. So after you've been doing this for a little while, how's your progress? What's working? Do you have ideas how we could all work together better? Are you blocked? Are you collaborating well? What do you need, right? So again, these questions will be shared afterward. But the idea is you want to ask these powerful questions to just see how they're doing. It's a way to show that you care, but it's also information gatherings for how you can make your processes, your check-ins better. Cool. And again, sharing your own challenges will help them feel more safe. So we're going to go into the systems, which is the last part of our day, but we've been here for almost an hour. So we're gonna take a break, which means I'm just gonna have you stand up. I'm gonna stand up for a minute too, oops. And just do like a little stretch break. We've all been sitting, it gets tiring. Taking breaks is good. Leading by example, doing some stretching. Maybe you just need a moment. Build the breaks in, because we're all human and it's hard to sit. And we've been doing a lot more sitting than normal. So, water break. Yeah, I think it's time. I'm gonna drink some water too. I have to say a soda stream at this point in life is the best thing that we have. All right, I saw there was a question, will the slides be shared? I won't share all of them, but I will share the main ones with resources as well as the questions. So yes, most of the information will be shared. I'll also share you links to a few different resources. So I think we'll be going about a half hour more, maybe shorter, but about 30 more minutes. Again, this is me communicating to you to say, here's what you can expect in this context of not normal times. So systems. Again, this is something you as the manager really owns, but structures are so helpful. And I think especially in times of insecurity, concern, structures really, really help us with feeling safe. And so as a manager, it is a really great opportunity for us to start thinking about what systems can we put in place, especially in these three areas. How are we going to communicate? How are we going to collaborate? And what is our project management plan? And I've talked about Kanban and stuff, but we'll get into it a little more. So just like take a minute, and if you think about work, again, let's share in the chat. How are your normal work structures supporting you? Like your normal meetings, your normal office setup, your normal project management tools. Like what are you using already that feels like, oh yeah, this is great, like this is helpful that we have? Chat, Zoom and Google Drive. Oh, thank goodness for, yeah, collaboration tools. Slack is super helpful for communication. Slack, Zoom. Yeah, some companies are thriving amidst this, this crisis, for sure. Email, great. Oh, VPN to be able to access stuff. Old school, not really sure what that is. Pen and paper? April, I'd love to hear more. Oh man, VPN capacity is maxed, so Google Drive is an alternative. Microsoft Teams, yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about Microsoft Teams. That's their cloud solution. So document sharing, things like that. Yeah, I think we're all realizing having access to information online is crucial now. And I know my last companies that I've worked in, having this access is already helpful. Confluence, Jira, Atlassian is great. So yeah, so there are tools that we're already using, and maybe we're starting to notice some gaps, or we're becoming more reliant on them. So the other thing I want to ask is like, where could you evolve? If things are working or are not working. How can we use this as a chance to maybe change things up, to do things a little bit differently? So just kind of let that hang there as we go into this. So communication structures, I really think of this as how are we coming together, right? How are we meeting? How are we seeing each other? How do we keep the connection alive even when we're not in the same place? So some things that are important to think about, and I won't go too deeply into these, but hours. I mean, generally people work 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 10 to 6. What are our hours? And again, if you're not commuting, maybe you give yourself that hour to do something else. But just with your team, to design with them, to say, hey, like, I don't know what your normal hours are, but what can we expect of each other during this time? Also recognizing people with kids, maybe they are gonna have less time available during the normal workday, but they're gonna work a little more early and late. I think that's very possible for folks with children that they're having to care for and teach in this time. So have the conversation, right? I think another one, and someone else mentioned this, I think it's a great idea to start the day. Maybe it's a 10 o'clock start, who knows? Again, design with your team with what would work. But some teams will start with like a Zoom stand-up or a coffee hour. And that's just a chance to check in. Those are great times to ask some of those questions from the other sections of just like, hey, what are the most important things today? Or, hey, what communication structures are going well, right? But starting the day off with that team connection helps you feel more accountability as well as more connection. One-on-ones I think are crucial, right? As managers, this is so important for you to have those one-on-ones with your team during this time, but even encourage them to have one-on-ones with each other, right? Most of the time in the office, people are able to just grab coffee or they're sitting next to someone and chatting. So even encourage 15-minute check-ins, one-on-ones on video with a peer. Have like a coffee date where you both ping each other and grab coffee out of your kitchen and talk on the phone. It's not just about you connecting with your team, it's about them connecting with each other. So encourage them to have one-on-ones as well. Again, this idea of like, we used to have the water cooler, we used to have the coffee pot to go get coffee around, and that's gone. So Slack, I know, is a great place to have a spot where people can converse and chat about random things. But again, encouraging people, maybe there's like a Zoom room that's always on that people can just drop into. And say hey to other people if they feel like chatting. Breaks, so important. I've said that a few times. But also think about our meetings. So what are the meetings already on the books for us? And also what meetings could we get rid of? What's not necessary? But what is more necessary as well? I'm a big fan when I do trainings with organizations. I talk a lot about like, does your meeting have a purpose? And I think we'll start to realize how many things do not have a purpose when we're on video and it's not just about that kind of social hanging out. So really ask yourself, like, what's the purpose of these meetings? Are we getting value of it? And can we maybe let it go? And also noticing this idea of the tyranny of the urgent. If you get a chat that's like, hey, I really need your help, that might feel like, oh, I need to drop everything and focus on this. So instead, really think like, one, remembering text messages, so much is misconstrued. So ask, don't be afraid to say, hey, is this urgent or is this something I can get back to you on? And remembering, like, okay, the example that I always use, you know, when you get a text message from like your mom or your boyfriend or girlfriend that's like, hey, we need to talk. And you're like, oh God, what did I do? Well, again, a message that's like, hey, I need your help feels really like it could be urgent. So don't feel free to ask, like, how urgent is this? Can I get back to you in a minute? Because interruptions, I think, can get really difficult if you're chatting a lot more often. And I love this from the New Yorker, but it really is one of those things. How many of our meetings are just status updates that could have been emails? And okay, some of it maybe we could use for that personal connection, but really, how are we using our time together effectively instead of just having the meetings because that's what we were used to? So I know a question came up. Yeah, fearful daily stand-ups and getting MITs could feel like micromanaging. Yeah, should I ask the team? totally give the team, let them know. And you can even say, hey, I'm really nervous about if we're being effective still and if we're getting things done. So I've implemented MITs and daily stand-ups to just help us stay connected. We're gonna do this for a week, but if after a week it's not feeling like it works, like give me feedback. So I think just continuing to be open for feedback, have one-on-ones, check in about all this stuff, because it's all new. We're all doing this a lot of times for the first time. So be willing to be a little bit vulnerable and say, I'm trying my best, how's it going? Yeah. So these are really basic principles, but I think it's just important to say because meetings are gonna be different now that we're online. So really think about why you meet. And there are 4 key reasons why we should have a meeting, right? The 4 key reasons are these bullet points. You either want to have a meeting because you want to influence someone to agree or to do something that needs to get done, to decide on a course of action, to solve a problem that you're facing, or to build relationships. So as you look through all of your meetings, stand-ups, weekly meetings, project meetings, team meetings, one-on-ones, like which category does that meeting fall into? I would ask yourself that. And if it doesn't fit into one of these, I would ask why, like maybe we can cancel that meeting. And then when you have the meeting, I always like to have, what is the purpose of it? What is the goal or outcome we want from it? What are the roles? Am I looking at a certain person to make a decision? And then also, what's the follow-up? So these are, again, practices that are good in normal times, but especially now, it's good to get really clear. And again, if your meetings don't meet one of those categories, you probably shouldn't have the meeting. But then also setting ground rules. I spoke at the beginning of this that we're going to use the chat box. I'd ask videos on. I'd ask you to shut down any multitasking. I think designing that with your team, setting some ground rules is really good. Because again, connection now is more important than ever. So just making some agreements with your team, and you can ask. These are all suggestions. Eating is really distracting, I find, if you're on a video call, /always. But try to set some ground rules and make agreements with each other about your meetings. Because just like when you're sitting in the office and someone's sitting there typing instead of paying attention, it's distracting. Well, it's the same thing here. So when we're meeting, let's show up. We're at our house the rest of the day alone. The other thing is I would just think about grouping your meetings during your day so you have like meeting time and then productivity time. Give people uninterrupted time to work. Now, communication mediums, really think about this and design this. If you haven't already, design this with your teams. This is a really simple one that I've had with teams in the past, but what is the use and what is the response expectation? So email, I think of that as usually non-urgent. 24 hours is the ideal response time. Phone, if you're calling me, that means it's urgent. We use it in emergencies. Texts are semi-urgent, right? It goes right to my phone, and request is response time within an hour, if at all possible. And then Slack, there's so much that happens on Slack, and I know some people use this for their primary communication. Direct messages I use sometimes is more primary, but I also need to turn off Slack if I'm trying to do work. So Slack, I really don't think of it as an urgent type of communication, but more as information flow. This is me, but I would say as managers, developing these norms for your team and communicating it can be really helpful. So that's communications. Lots of information I'm sending your way. So another thing to think about is just, what do you think about in terms of project management? Do you have tools that you're already using? I'd love if you share them in the chat. Oops. What tools do you use to manage projects? Again, do you use something for Kanban? Are you using Google Docs? Share in the chat. What tools do you use for your project management? Asana, yeah, really good for agile project management. Smartsheet, really, yep, Smartsheet is a total Kanban tool. Asana, GitHub, Atlassian, tons of stuff. If we have a lot of tools, also it's good to get really specific about where do we look for what. Yeah, in-person stuff, Jira, Trello is a great tool. Oh, Azure for DevOps. Smartsheet is great, project management. So some of these are paid, some of these are free. G Suite, Slack, Zoom, Trello, great. Yeah, so just wanted to kind of crowdsource some different tools that are out there. So when I think about project management, I really think about this as being like, how are we aligning on what's getting done? Because there's tools, right? How are we distributing and organizing work? What's our platform, right? Those Jiras, a lot like those things. And are we using Agile? Agile methodology is this thing of you create these usually 2-week sprints, which is we're going to get this amount of work done in this period of time. And then also it helps us manage handoffs, etc. It also makes it so that we can do work congruently instead of waiting for things. Waterfall, which is the other technique, which is like doing a whole chunk of work and then going to the next one. So how are you working? Communicate that to your team, what tools you'll be using. And then what are our collaboration systems, right? I think it's a beautiful thing to say to your team, okay, these are the meetings we have. This is the purpose of those meetings. This is where handoffs will happen. This is where approvals will happen. And this is what those response expectations are. So I think this is a chance, again, this is kind of like zoning up for you as managers to say, okay, how do I make sure my team is really clear what tools are and what our collaboration expectations are? Again, think about it, communicate these things to your team. And then tools, this is just a list of different tools that I had used. A lot of these are free, some of them are paid, but tons of different resources for this video conferencing, for document sharing, for project management. Again, we saw a bunch in the chat as well, but tools, these digital tools where you can work in the cloud, i.e. collaboratively instead of having to send each other files, really, really valuable. If you haven't invested in them, now's a really good time to think about it or talking to your IT department about what's possible. So again, we want to design these systems, but we also want to check in with our team on how they're working. So it's fair to start off to say, hey, working from home is going to create some different ways for us to collaborate. And then for you to say, these are the structures we have in place, and these are the expectations around them, right? So again, this should come from you as the leader. If you have other teams that you collaborate with, you should probably chat with those other leaders to say, hey, are we aligned on what our systems will be and what our agreements are around them? And then once you have those, ask the team, hey, how are these working for us? Do you think they'll get in the way? Anything else you'd like to see, advice you have for me? Also for communication, project management, documentation. Are people comfortable? Do they know how to use the tools? Do they have questions for you as you go over the plan or concerns? So share with them the plan and just get really clear. And it may even be something like, hey, we use these things already, but I want you to know it's even more important that you document. It's even more important that you effectively move things on the Kanban board. Like I really need you to up your game for accountability's sake. And the big thing is you want to work together to find the right solution, right? You're a team. It's not just you as the leader. You set the vision, but work collaboratively with the team to design it. So how do we know how it's working? Again, we ask. That's the beauty of it. We're a team, we collaborate. So just ask, how's the communication going? What's working, where are the gaps? Do you need more or less from me? How is our project management working? Is anything missing for you? Are you getting the information you need? What do we need more of? Am I bothering you too much? But do you have the information and resources you need? That's the goal of all these systems, right? For communications, for project management. It's about making sure people have the stuff that they need in these different times. Whew. So I've talked a lot over the last hour and 17 minutes, and we've covered 4 major areas, right? The first one was all about caring personally. How do you help people land in the fact that things are hard, that they might be scared, that it's all different? How do we really up our empathy and let people feel safe at work while at home. The next one is the setup. Do they have the resources and tools that they need to be successful? Work. What is the work we need to do? Is it really as important as we always thought it was? What is okay to let go of right now for the sake of all of our well-being? What do we need to ramp up? What are the opportunities in terms of how we're contributing? And then the last part, and this is one really manager's own, what are the systems we have in place to create structure so that we feel safe, but we also really feel like we're making progress toward meaningful work? So that is my philosophy for how to think about remote management. I've shared a ton of content. Again, I will send a follow-up email with a number of the slides as well as links to different resources that I think are helpful. Now is the time for Q&A. So if things are coming up, I know we have a few different points as well, but there is continued support. So that first link is a link to my website. You can reach out to share just any things that you want. The next link, the Sign Up Manager Group Coaching, for those who attended this class, I have a 3-week, really easy manager training that's going to be coming up this time for the next 3 weeks that just like helps us with the transition. So for those who attended the class, there's a little bit of a discount. So go ahead to that link and you can get signed up. I do team coaching, I do one-on-one coaching, I do training. It's all available remote. I'm here to support you. But before we jump in, the questions. Yeah, so great question. What about checking in and asking how things are working with people who aren't as well-spoken? Neurodiverse population. I love that. So think about different mediums of communication, right? My natural go-to is to talk in person, but even for those of us who are introverted, thinking about that right off the foot is really hard, right? We may not be able to come up with answers because we want to process. So thinking about saying things like, one, giving them questions in advance. So shooting an email to say, hey, this is what I want to talk about. I'd love for you to think about it in advance. You can also send an email and just ask to communicate via text, but design with them. Hey, I really want to just see how things are going. What would work well for you? What systems could help you? When you feel the best and the safest, what's happening? So asking questions like that is great. I see a lot of thank yous. Thanks for the questions, pointing out resources. Again, a big shout out to Laura for helping me manage stuff along the way. Please feel free to reach out. My contact information is online. I'm so excited, wishing you the best, and I will have a follow-up sent very soon. Ideas around a virtual happy hour. Yeah, so I've heard a lot of cool things for this. Virtual happy hours could be as simple as a coffee. It could be wine. You could do pet introductions. You could ask people to bring one of their favorite pieces of art or treasures to share about it. You could ask people to share like what the most interesting thing is that they're reading. Maybe someone is gardening, like tell us about a hobby. Just get really curious about people and give them a thing to share. I think that's a great way to do happy hour. Ooh, Fortnite games, virtual backgrounds are fun. I love that. Oh, random coffee. That's a great Slack extension. It like pairs you up with random people at your work so you can have coffee together. Yeah. House party happy hours, pet meet and greet. Oh, love all the sharing. Cool. Okay, well, we'll keep the chat open for a little bit longer. Thank you again for joining. This is the end of our session, so you get some time back, something I always love to do. Have a great day. Take care of yourself. Look out for your teams and each other, and best of luck. Thanks, folks. Yeah.